try to. I mean, the topics is complicated. I guess I'm the only guy who's going to talk about the far west, about the far west of the Arab world. So I'm trying to focus on Casablanca, and I will stop on those four steps or four topics. A little bit of history about Casablanca, because maybe some of the audience doesn't know the city, legislation and protection, which is something that's really interesting for me. And I guess we can maybe develop a comparison between our countries. And I see not a lot of presentation made a focus on the local legislation about the protection of heritage. Of course, the World Heritage process that mentioned Jad earlier, and of course, as conclusion, some projects, and those projects can lead on several debates. Casablanca is known as a modern city, but I want to make a stop here because one of the oldest traces of human being have been found in Casablanca, which is 600,000 years of the Acheulean period. So the oldest North African is from Casablanca, just to make it clear. So it's for the modern city, it's quite a good performance. As the city was demolished several times in its history by earthquakes, by wars, all the what we call the old city is quite 19th and 20th century. The last earthquake was in the end of 18th century. Therefore, the old Medina is kind of uh, modern architecture, or like Mediterranean architecture, as you can see the facade. So when you go to the modern Medina, it's quite different, and you're quite surprised if you want to see what you expect as I mean, like Tetouan, Fes, Marrakesh, or Rabat. You'll be surprised, because kind of Medina with like a medieval pattern in terms of urban fabric, but in terms of facade, you have balconies, windows, kind of modernity that's like eclectic, and which make it very specific. Of course, the big growth of Casablanca is between the two wars, not only between two wars, so the main post Darwin 1917, and some of the famous building that you can see if you maybe you saw, but or you can see if you come, some amazing Art Deco, but not only Art Deco buildings that are still in Casablanca. There's also this kind of colonial architecture that was built during the starting from the end of the 20s and 30s, which is like architecture designed by French architects for Moroccan people. So people are convinced locally, some people are convinced locally that that's our heritage, that's our history, because it looks like ours with the pattern and the forms. And the old Medina, which is the heritage, the history, is not ours, which is kind of a dilemma or interesting. uh, that's why I wanted to stop on this. When we talk about colonial heritage, this is colonial heritage, actually, technically speaking. And of course, when we're talking about heritage, and there is a lot of difference. When I mean, maybe Mercedes will remember when we start talking about heritage in Casablanca, things improved a lot, and now people agree more or less that there is heritage, the Art Deco period, everything, but there's still a lot to do. I think it's not the only case in Casablanca with the Brutalist period, with the 80s period. Those buildings, I mean, we were having hard time convince the authorities that also this is also heritage, and this is also needs to be preserved because of architecture, because of to understand the city. It's not only what's happened to the years, and there's also what happened before colonial period and what's happening nowadays, starting from 60s, 70s, 80s, and we have an interesting brutalism architecture that's not. I mean, not the building of Elias Aguirre up left has been demolished recently, by the way. This is another kind of architecture we're having a hard time convincing people that's heritage. All those amazing experiences of social housing, what we called at that time the logement pour le plus grand nombre. And what's amazing is those buildings are in the books of architecture all around the world, but locally, it's not considered yet for the moment as heritage. You see on the top the buildings at their construction, and the down photos how they look like now. And of course, we had our lots of demolitions. Those are the buildings or the construction that you will not be able to see anymore. The Frères Perret building, La Galerie Lafayette, the theater, the largest pool in Africa, and also the bull ring, one of the few bull rings in North Africa that has been demolished. In legislation, Of course, Morocco has signed several international agreements as World Heritage, Intangible Heritage, and Cultural Diversity. Only nine Moroccan sites are registered as World Heritage in the World Heritage List. 7 of them are urban sites, and the main national text for heritage is the law 2280, which is a law from the 1980. It's a very old law. It's 40 years old, more than 40 years old. But I mean, the state will not be able to change it. They had some tentative to change to update the law, but that's one. I mean, still the law that is on working. The first law is back to 1912, which is the first Dahir or law talking about heritage. It starts with the French protectorate, and we had some other laws that took place to regulate the heritage, the preservation of heritage in Morocco. Several texts, and one of the main important texts is from 1945, and between 1912 and 1946, more than 40 different laws regulated heritage, and we're talking about the French zone. Only one text in Tangier, I remind you that it was international city in 1925, and no law in the north or south of Morocco that was under Spanish control. So when we talk about laws, just make it clear that we're talking about the French, the zone under French domination. And it took like 10 years after independence to like unify the law in all the country. From the law, what's interesting with our law is that it doesn't. I mean, for those who, I mean, this is a small definition that is on the red square. For those who don't read Arabic, it means that all what has historical or legendary or picturesque or leads to the science and needs related with the past and also human sciences, which means that in our law there's nothing about historical. I mean, the building to be protected doesn't need to be old and doesn't need to be made by Moroccans. Nothing is about that in our law, which allows us to protect even a building built last year by people who can come from wherever can come. So the law doesn't specify any anteriority of the building, and that doesn't necessarily needs to be built by Moroccan. That's what allows us to protect in Casablanca more than 250 buildings now registered in the national heritage. Things are moving in Casablanca in terms of protection. In addition of the almost 200 heritage lists, there's also protection of the zone. You can see the decision of the Ministry of Culture and the Youth that decided to put in the taqyid, and put in the list of conservation all the urban historical center of the city of Casablanca, which means the colonial period center. When you say in Casablanca, when you say Medina, it's the colonial period downtown. When it's the old Medina, it's the old Medina. The city that exists before the colonialism. One of also specific things happening in Casablanca is also the municipality, which created a company in 2015, like 6-7 years ago, which is a private company, Société Anonyme, but where the 70% of the shares are from public institutions, and this company is supposed to work on the inventory of heritage, rehabilitation, and also valorization of the heritage, which is kind of tool supposed to be more efficient than the municipality itself. And also in the local regulation, which in the new Plan d'Aménagement 2021, you can see abstract from the map. All the blue zones are heritage zones, which is not necessarily in the national list. And you see in the abstract of the local organization, we have bâtiment valeur patrimoniale, so building with the heritage value, building with heritage value within a large plot to be protected, and so on and so forth. And the buildings are listed in this local organization, like by value A, exceptional, value B, interesting, notable, and the unit of value C that have heritage quality that can be where we can add some floors. And we have also some ILO protection. I mentioned also in that local organization the use of using some like integrity and authenticity, which is more like international ICOMOS / UNESCO vocabulary, which is very rare to find it into local regulation of urban planning in the municipality of Casablanca. So we found those aspects, which is kind of big step forward. It doesn't mean that in the field is better, but still on the documents. That's why I was mentioning that all those changes in the regulation. I'd like to see if there's something similar happening in other countries to compare those shifts. World Heritage process. Jad mentioned earlier that Casablanca is in the tentative list from 2013 under this title, Casablanca 20th Century City, Crossroads of Influences. Morocco signed the convention in 75, and 9 sites are on this list. The only site that include the modern zone is Rabat in 2012. And on the Maghreb, if you count the 5 countries of the Maghreb, the total of sites is 31 sites in the World Heritage. And if we count France, Spain, and Italy, we have almost 150 sites, which is also confirmed the non-equilibrium that was mentioned earlier. We start the process in 2004 with the convention between the Ministry of Culture and Casa Mémoire and participation of several experts and partners. And we propose the outstanding universal value, as it is mentioned in front of you, and we mentioned, or we focused on the modernity as Casablanca as a cradle of modernity, actually at least in North Africa, on the West North Africa, and we proposed these texts, exceptional testimony in the 20th century in North Africa of modernities characterized by cultural mix and resulted from coherent systems of actors, from urban planners to Ma'alem, in the creation and renewal of urban spaces and buildings. Saying that we want to focus on modernity in our submission, we'll try to discuss and we agreed on what be the pillars to support this outstanding value, what we call in technical words les attributs de la valeur. So we mentioned or we agreed on 5 main pillars, all the urban fabrics. So you can see in less than 50 years, all different patterns, all different examples of neighborhoods that use different theories, different patterns, different shape of the city, and they're also in expression of the concentration of modernity in somehow in a small space. Of course, these housing experiences, all the several experiences, different experiences of social housing, what we call at that time housing of the greatest numbers, and those are also used as examples in other countries. Leisure sites in Morocco, I think in other Arab world. I mean, leisure doesn't exist in our culture, in our traditions. So it was like the beginning of the leisure, and like the word leisure somehow came to Morocco through Casablanca by sports, cinema, parks, swimming pools. This show-off way of life, and this leisure is also an open gate to the modernity, and also an expression of new behavior in the public space, especially for women. And this is one of the aspects that those spaces lead to, and that's what we want to focus on. Of course, the architectural expressions and also the architectural expression, but taken from one to the other, some elements of the local patterns or local handicrafts. And city being the city of Casablanca being the city of economy and trades, the spaces and modernity. So the spaces of like banks, like markets, like the harbor, like the garage for cars. All those spaces are also the modernity also somehow came from, and that was also the gate of modernity to modernize the economy. And so those sites needs to be protected for that. So that's give us kind of what our friend Jean-Luc Cohen called the archipelago, l'archipel du patrimoine, and that's what was in the submitted dossier in 2016. But as we never do the things like the others, Morocco submitted the dossier in February 2016, and in the morning, and he removed it. The country removed it officially in the afternoon. So the first time in the history of UNESCO that the country proposed a site for to be submitted for the World Heritage in the morning, and the same day they changed its mind without no official reason. So for the moment, there's kind of omerta around that, and we're trying now. People are changing, and people change. It's not the same minister, not the same mayor, it's not the same ambassador. So we're trying to put this matter on the table again, with not a lot of success for the moment, I have to say, but we keep the faith. And to finish, I'm going to mention some project or some things happening nowadays in Casablanca. Each one of them can lead to a debate. For example, first of thing, two examples about this new fashion of rebuilding the heritage. For the case of the Hotel Lincoln, that everybody knows, the building was built in 1917, protected by law. It was almost a ruin, and so it was like completely demolished, and they're rebuilding a high-end hotel, but with the same look and also with the same look of the project on the left side. On the right side of the slide, it's this Royal Mansour building built in 1948 by Émile Duhon, the photo on top, and demolished and rebuilt again with more than 20 stories. And all the communication, all the marketing for this project was about rebuilding heritage, reconstruire notre héritage. And it's not about, so it's kind of new posture in terms of marketing, saying, okay, we can demolish and build the same, and that's also part of rebuilding the heritage. I think that's also, I'm not developing more, but it can open a lot of bills about maybe what's happening in other countries. This new local way of doing the façadism, so because of the law and the new regulation, buildings are more protected, so some negotiation is ongoing between the owners and the state, and they finish by, okay, you keep the facade and you can do all what you want. So you can see on the right some nice examples of contemporary architecture in its dialogue with heritage, and on the left one building that was built in 31 and was completely emptied in the middle and rebuilt again. So it's like more classical way of doing the facade. The Old Medina is a really interesting case because it's not in the mind of people the heritage. There is no heritage in the Old Medina. The Old Medina heritage is Rabat, Fes, Tetuan, Marrakesh, Meknes, etc. The king visited in 2010, and of course, because of the visit of the king, it starts to be heritage, of course, because he cannot visit something that's not heritage. So they put a lot of money in the restoration of heritage, like $50 million was put in the restoration of buildings, of streets, of drainage, murals, theirs. And now, 10 years after, it's still the same put. I mean, it's not enough to put that particular site, which is very interesting, by the way, in terms of history, in terms of historical events, but it's not in the heritage map that people has in mind. They will never, when you ask somebody, they will never mention the Old Medina as heritage in the city of Casablanca. One particular good experience we had in this restoration of the old Sacré-Cœur Church in Casablanca, built in 1930, is a listed heritage, and it was financed by the City Hall, and with the participation of the Ministry of Culture, and we had kind of good process of discussion and debate to agree on what we can do within the building, also even if it's protected. So we had kind of good process, which is not always the case, of cooperation between architects, City Hall, and the Ministry of Culture to get to an agreement so that they accept us to build this kind of metallic frame within the building to do like contemporary intervention in a heritage building. Two or three last slides. The large, somebody mentioned that earlier, large belief in the case of Casablanca that by working on the public spaces and by improving the public spaces, the private owners will follow. So there's lots of money, lots of projects going on to make the public space better, and with a lot of political support. You see in the middle the opening, the photo opening with the mayor. Our mayor is a lady in a blue coat, and she's putting a lot of communication on those projects, and so far we didn't see big impact on the behavior of the private owners, but still there's a lot of works going on in this restoring the heritage, the historical public spaces, which is good to notice, to know. Last example, the tramway of Casablanca. 10 years ago, they started the first line of tramway. Now they're working on the fourth line, going through the Boulevard de la Gare, which is Boulevard Mohammed V, which is one of the famous heritage boulevards. So there you have photo of before and after. And this is something interesting, but it doesn't have the same consequences. Everybody was talking about this gentrification, the change of the people will be attracted by the apartment, the shops will change. Nothing. I mean, it's another public space, obviously less cars, but there's not this expected consequences that happen in cities in Europe. So we are not in Europe, we're in Casablanca, and even 10 years ago, 10 years after the tramway, this the house you can still buy a house in the old town in Casablanca with almost the same price than before the tramway. The city is not. I mean, this zone is still common. There's no any gentrification that can be noticed. And I think I'm done now. Thank you very much. Shukran.
Okay, thank you, Abderrahim. So I think we have a few minutes for questions. Jade.
Hello, Abderrahim.
Alan.
Sorry.
Alan.
I just have one question. 20 years ago, there was a project to build a huge avenue, monumental avenue between the French Quarter and the mosque. What happens with this project? Was it done? Was it not done? Was it stopped, etc., etc.? I'm curious to know.
Actually, that's typically the project that are launched by the highest authority of the country. It's a mistake, but they cannot say it's a mistake. So the project is still on. They did like 20% of the avenue. Nobody's talking about, but there's no official statement saying that they're canceling the project. So when you go near the mosque, you're gonna notice that they demolished like maybe 200 meters out of the 1 kilometer that they need to be demolished. You mentioned 20 years. So in the last 50 years, you can come and you will see that they will not move more. So it's typically a project that will not happen, but nobody can say that it had to be cancelled because it was launched by the previous king. So you cannot say the king made a mistake. It's impossible to say that.
One more question or a comment by Rami? No, not even. It's late. Okay. Wow, sorry. Okay, thank you, Abderrahim.